Have you achieved success and a high income, but still lack personal fulfillment and work-life balance? You're in the right place. Welcome to the Successful But Struggling podcast. Join us as Erin, Eunicia, Joanne, and Mim share transformative insights and practical strategies just for you. Discover real stories and lessons that will elevate your personal satisfaction, professional accomplishment, and financial empowerment.
Welcome back. And I'm so excited to have Dr. Joanne Sotelo, our psychiatrist, who is also a coach. And we're going to be talking about some topics she was sharing at a recent retreat that she led for women in medicine, as well as one of her group coaching sessions. And that was about preparation, not even preparation for upcoming holidays that we have here in the US, but actually preparation for the next year because it's just over a month away. And there was so much positive feedback Joanne had from those sessions with her clients. We thought it would be a great idea to share it with you, our podcast listener. And I'm so excited to dig into this topic, Joanne, because as I was talking before, so often we are in reactive mode in medicine. And we're talking again, like we have in previous episodes, of let's get into preparation to ensure success with less chaos, less difficulty. So let's dive in to this topic of getting prepared for the next year. And why don't you share with me some of the insight that you shared with your other clients, Joanne?
Yes, Erin, I couldn't wait to share. I still feel like I'm floating. My heart is so full after having the opportunity to host a retreat for women physicians at my house. And these are women who've been coaching with me for some time, and they've met before, some of them, or they've met over Zoom. So it's just beautiful. We don't do enough of that connection and spending real time together away from our day-to-day business and the family and the kids and work. So it's very special. So we did a lot of work in different things. I like to do a lot of mindset, mental, emotional well-being. And then we do a lot of kind of getting clarity where we are, what we want to do. We build on confidence, so many different things. But perfect for this time of the year, we did, like you're saying, a lot of preparation to finish this year strong, like we talked in one of our last episodes, but then also setting ourselves up for success for next year. And the truth is, we could do this work any time of the year, but there's a sense of hope and specialness, if that's a word, that can come at the beginning of a year, birthdays, anniversaries, that we have to use and use as leverage to get us moving, get some momentum. So I love that kind of vision, future casting, manifestation, whatever you want to call. So we did some vision boarding as well after we did the work. So if I can tell you briefly, we did some kind of that clarity to what we want, but then we also thought of what are some of the things that get in the way, because a lot of times there are external obstacles, but a lot of times it's our own thoughts, our own beliefs. And we kind of stepped into that future self that we want to create. And what is that future self doing and envisioning? And how does she feel? And what are her thoughts? And what are her beliefs? That beautiful work. And then after we have all that connection with all those new beliefs and emotions, we visualize it. Then we went to create the board. So it meant something very different. It was just beautiful. I can go on and on and on talking about the retreat. And so then I brought that work back into our weekly calls that we do as a group coaching. And that was the topic of this week, and kind of why is this important, and different ways that we can think about it so that we're not just going with the flow. A lot of times, like you said, we're very good at acting under stress, and there's things that happen and we have that ability, but every time that we have an ability to prepare, recharge our batteries, have a buffer, and be very clear to what we want. We have to do that work. We need that sense of responsibility, and it's just beautiful to do it in a group and with help and through coaching. And so anyways, again, I can go on and on. It was beautiful. Thank you for asking.
And I love your excitement about this and also bringing up the topic of envisioning the future, having this hope that things can change, and really helping create the reality we want to see first in our minds. And then you also shared, I love vision boards. I love leading those vision board sessions to put a visual in front of you. That's your reminder. That's where I want to go. Because so many times when I've talked to women in medicine and coaching sessions or just chatting, they're unclear of what they want. They know what they don't want, but it's a totally different conversation when you ask them to pause and say, "Okay, I hear that. You don't want this anymore. What do you want?" And there's always that long pause. And I think the more we challenge women in medicine to start thinking about that, what do you want? Not what do you feel obligated to do? What are other people choosing for you? But what do you want? And then revisiting those thoughts regularly. I know with vision boards, I think at least once a year, but even more, because that forces you to pause and think, what do you want? And getting away from that, it's more action oriented, right? And creating that future that you're looking forward to.
Yes, an analogy that I like is like when you go to a restaurant and you say, well, I don't want a salad, I don't want soup. And then the waiter is looking at you like, so what do you want? And then it's like as if you were staring back. So when we are not specific, that's kind of what we're doing. We just, kind of call it out, or we can get a little specific, like, well, I guess I want a sandwich. And then that's it. So you have to be very, very specific, and I always joke that I can get what we call like a little woo woo of what's the energy that you put out in the universe, and what's the language that you're using, and making sure that you're calling it the way you want it. And like I said, as a psychiatrist, I can also explain it in kind of what's going on neurochemically in our brain, and what are those things that we are wiring together, what neurons are working together. And we've talked here about activating our reticular activating system of what you focus on, that's what you're going to start seeing more of. It's like when you buy a new car, and then all of a sudden you're seeing it all the time because it's in front of your awareness. So that's what we want to do when we're envisioning. We want to be specific. We want to order very specifically, even right, like the right temperature of the bread, what's in it, all the things. And then also making sure that that is where our attention and our energy and our efforts are going. And it's just way easier. And these are things that we can control, especially when we live very stressful lives that, things happen.
And that clarity in speaking something out loud. And I actually just had lunch with a pre-med student yesterday, and I know her aunt, and her aunt and I went to dinner. I think it was 2 months ago or just shy of 2 months ago. And her aunt spoke out loud. My niece is applying to medical school. Do you have any connections? And I was like, well, this is where I went. And we're both physicians, right? I said, this is where I went. If there's something that I can help her for my specific medical school. The very next day, this niece gets an invitation for an interview. And then she shows up for the interview. I write a letter of recommendation. She just found out she got into my medical school. I'm so excited. And we were talking about this as we met in person over lunch yesterday. And I said, it's important that we speak out loud with clarity what we want. And I said, so the fact that your aunt spoke out loud what you needed, and I responded in a way, how can I help? And then you accepted my offer. It was just this magical thing, some serendipity maybe, but I really believe that when we are clear with spirit, God, the universe, with what we want, and we speak it out loud and share it, then say okay to people helping move that vision forward. It's amazing the magic that can happen. So I love that you set up the circumstances for the women in your retreat and in your session to start that magic. And then when they're looking back in a few months going, "Oh my gosh, look what we started months ago."
Yes. And for some of the doctors who have been there in my previous retreat less than 6 months ago, to have them share their progress and like, wow, we talked about that then, and I am taking action, and I can show you guys the consequences, the results, I should say, of all the work that we did. Yes, again, it's just a beautiful thing. I'm very grateful for it.
Love that. And I'm wondering, as we talk about preparing for the new year that's just around the corner, why is it so important that women physicians do this preparation? What's so specific to them?
Yes. And I love to do this work, but it makes more sense when we know why it's important. And when I work with women physicians, one of the things that I hear the most is a sense of losing their sense of autonomy. And this is a great way when we are clear, when we know our values, our priorities, when we know what we want in this season of our lives. It's a lot better to protect our time, our energy, set boundaries, and that gives us a sense of autonomy even when the circumstances don't change. And then we stay aligned with what's important to us. And secondarily, when we are doing things that are important to us, that also, of course, will help us with dealing with our stress and overwhelm and burnout prevention. So, those are probably the things that I hear the most with women physicians, and this kind of deeper work can help them with, right? And you don't always think, sometimes people say, like, oh, that's so cheesy, like future casting and vision boarding. But when you do it well, it can just literally create a path to move forward in a way that really makes sense.
Well, and it's related to all of us went through medical training when we were maybe in junior high, high school, and we started thinking, I want to be a physician. We had a vision of what we wanted. And then this is a specialty I want to go in. And we had that vision, we had a very clear path. And then the shift happens where it's left up to you and you've done your training. And then oftentimes I think we just end up meandering in a path. And then we wake up and we go, how did I end up here? Why am I so overwhelmed? Why am I so unhappy? And it's like, well, because you didn't start looking at where do you want to go? And then the world and its forces put you in, in some random place that you didn't think about. And in that creating clarity in where you want to go, now you've got a compass, and then you make your decisions and you say, is this going towards that vision I have or away? And without the clarity of that vision, how do you even know where you're supposed to end up?
Yes, and another thing that's so important for us as women physicians, then hearing you what you're saying, it reminds me, we need to redefine what makes us feel successful and how we get our sense of self, which, talking about medical students, it changes throughout our career and the seasons of our lives, and what, everything that we're doing. And so much of that is pre-programmed for us, right? Like someone else taught us how we're supposed to feel good and what success in medicine means. And in this season of your life, it might be that you just have more time with your family, or that you have more time to take care of yourself. And you have to be very clear about that, because if not, those sneaky thoughts get in the way and then say, like, make you feel guilty, or like you should be doing more. And it takes you away from that sense of lack and into more of a sense of abundance, because you'll be tapping more in, what you hear me talk so much about, into real balance and that sense of harmony and flow in your life. So all of that can come from this work. It's beautiful.
I love that. And Joanne, you've been so good about helping create frameworks, because we always want to know, how can we implement this? And you had shared, I can't wait to hear the details of it, that you do have a framework you created that helps women in medicine better prepare for the upcoming year or better prepare for the future? And I would love to hear the details.
Yes. And so if you're not driving, you can grab a pen and pencil. No, I'm sorry, pen and paper. I always say that wrong. And take notes because I love an acronym and I love framework. So the word that we're going to use is vision because we're envisioning our future. And the first one, so V is for visualize your future self, which is what we were just talking about. But visualize it in detail, like really think of yourself in the future almost like a movie. And you can even journal about it. What would a day in the life of your future self? And I like to do a year out, not more than 3. You can do this exercise in so many ways, but I like to do this exercise where it's far enough that there's hope to see results from your work, but not that far out that then it feels almost impossible. So, you can try it out and really, really connect with what's the emotion that is the fuel for the work. And of course, what are some of the thoughts that you can give yourself to keep that emotion? Because that's what's going to make your work and your steps sustainable moving forward. The second letter is I, right? If I have to make sure I keep it correct, for identify your desires and intentions. So again, very, very clear. Ask, what do you want the most right now? And why is that important to you? Right? Like a lot of times, we use the example of, I want to be healthier or I want to lose weight, but why? Are you going on a fancy vacation and you just want to wear a certain dress? Or is it because you want to keep up with your teenager kids in a hike? Or you're a little bit older and there's family history in of weight gain or high blood pressure, and you want to make sure then, right, like you fight those genetics. So it's so important to connect with that why. Erin, interrupt me as you want, but if not, then
Oh, I'm loving this so
okay.
far. Yeah, let's keep going.
I'll keep on going. So the S is shift limiting beliefs. And this is part of what I was talking before, right? So limiting beliefs is a phrase that we hear a lot in this personal development. So call it your inner critic, that mean person in your brain. It's those thoughts that you have so often that they really get in your way. They become an obstacle. But because you've thought about them so much, you believe them as facts and they get in the way. So if that's a difficult thing for you to figure out, think of something that you've wanted for a while and that you say like, okay, I am going to work on this, and you set yourself up, and then you keep on not following through with the promises that you made to yourself, and then really pause and with right like with a lot of compassion ask yourself what's really getting in the way. And your brain might give you external things like, well, I've been busier at work, the kids have practice, my family, someone in my family gets sick. And then you acknowledge that, and then you ask yourself, what else? What do I believe about that thing that I really want? Or what do I believe about myself, and if can I get there? This is deep work, but it's so important. I think that that's one of the things that we work on the most in the coaching, because especially if you're doing it with someone else, someone who can mirror back, especially if there are patterns of thinking or patterns of behaviors of, and sometimes it's subtle. So that by itself, it's almost a topic all on its own, but really think about what are those thoughts that are holding you back. And then, of course, the work would be, can you replace them with a different one? And it has to be a subtle shift. It cannot be too far out that your brain will not believe it. It has to be something that you believe. And you might start even with facts of something that you can remind your brain of. Like, no, this is true. Let me show you some facts of how I'm working towards this. I can do it. I can build my momentum. I can keep on moving forward. So that's super important work. Not easy at all, but it's very important for us to move forward. To give you the last 2 letters, O is open yourself to abundance. And we can get very cheesy in talking about abundance, but think about it kind of in the things that you are grateful for. Start there because that's, again, like the best fuel. And then think of, I skipped a letter, I
I'm
think.
gonna say,
Sorry.
there's another I in there, Joanne.
I always do this. Okay, this is live recording. Okay, so like I said, let's go back. I for implement aligned actions, right? Like we can, this is an easier one. We can have all the visioning and all the connection, all the emotions. And if we don't architect back a plan with actions that we can follow through, we're not going to see the results that we really want, right? Like this is not quiet work. This is work that requires a lot of action. It's just going to be easier because you've done all the pre-work and you're connected with your why and you have that clarity. So that's the I. Now, the last two. So, like I was saying, open yourself to abundance, right? Like really, and I love to think about it this way because it seems like it's obvious. Of course I want more. Of course I want to grow. But sometimes we get in our own way and we have to have that belief that we can, that we deserve it, that we are worth it. And I'm surprised and it hurts my heart every time that, a lot of times I'm working and it came up this weekend of that, so many of them, what they said, some of their limiting beliefs was, I'm not worth it. I don't deserve this. I'm doing it wrong. And when we connect with that abundance, we give ourselves permission to receive, not just give, right? It's not just the work, but then we're open to receiving and really creating that shift,
Oh,
which
and
takes me
receiving is so hard
I know, I
because
know.
we're such givers in medicine, that receiving. So I'm gonna point that out to our listener. Being open to receiving, so
Yes.
powerful.
Yes, yes, yes. I feel it. It's very important. It was very moving to hear us because right, like it was so beautiful to see them like giving each other feedback and and seeing themselves in the other and that vulnerability that we create in this work and knowing that we are not alone.
And even yeah, and even you talk about open to abundance, even those celebrating your wins and pausing. So think about if every time you do something successful, because I so often my clients will say something they did and then they just want to gloss over to the next thing. I'm like, no, wait, 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 let's pause. Did you hear what you just said? Or did you hear that big shift? Or did you hear the change in your language? And oftentimes that allows us to go, oh, yeah, I did that, didn't I? And think about if you stay open to that, how much more abundance you will have because you didn't just gloss over all of your successes and wins that you had, racing to the next one. So open to abundance. I'm going to underline that one and circle it in red.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And if it's hard for you to connect with that, connect with gratitude. What are some of the things that you're grateful for? And that's like a beautiful door opening into abundance, and that's how we stay in that receiving, which is hard to say it out loud because we are so giving, but it's if we have more, we have more to give, right? So it's like my analogy of like we say, don't pour from an empty glass, talking about our how we are supposed to take care of ourselves. And I love thinking of ourselves as more of like a flower vase, in that we pour and pour and pour, and then right, not we pour into ourselves, and then that overflow feeds everyone around us and we stay tall and strong. And every now and then we might have to lean over and pour a little bit more out of ourselves, but it's that constant self-love that's all given. And I know I got a little cheesy, but
Well, you're talking about creating reserves and instead of, fueling on, going on fumes, pouring from abundance, completely different. We wouldn't do the same to our cars, having them running on empty all day. And yet for ourselves, we just have this expectation. That's just the way it is, but it doesn't have to be that way. So we've got one more letter,
yeah,
Joanne.
exactly. Okay, so the last one is nurture your new identity, which I love. That was another big thing that we talked about in the retreat that I talk a lot in my group coaching is really stepping into this new identity. And if new is too much for your brain, you can say this your next level, your growth, but we have to be in tune with these identity shifts, because if we don't integrate it into ourselves, it's not sustainable. And it's good to think about it like maybe the question of how can I show up today as the person I want to become. So for example, one of the doctors, she's actually a dentist, is working with me, she was saying that, I'm always wearing scrubs and I have like the like hippie, and she's this really strong business owner. And she says, I want to step more into my CEO-ness. I'm making up a word. And so she was talking about how she wanted to show up a little bit more elegant. And you can see these are shifts in the identity. We're not saying that she's going to become another person. And I was telling her, sometimes even just saying, like, let's wear like a fancy scarf, or let's pull our hair up, or maybe we wear a different shade of lipstick. And I know those sound like silly examples, but if you give it the intention of this is me showing up in this kind of new role, or accentuating parts of my role, that because that's where I want to head, this is how we feed our brain. This is how we really shift in a way that doesn't feel like it's too far out. I hope that makes sense. I love identity work.
Yeah. Well, and you're talking about it doesn't take a lot. You don't need to go out and buy a new wardrobe. You can take small shifts, and when you do those consistently, you get big results. I love that. So I'm just going to do a recap here, Joanne. What I heard you talking about is, in order to successfully prepare for this upcoming year, it's important to get clarity. And you even talk about doing vision boards, but even just writing it out, spending time to think about it. And you also talked about it's important so much for women in medicine to prepare, because we oftentimes lose our autonomy, and that does not feel good. It doesn't make us feel like we have the ability to make decisions, but we really do. And so it's important to find out what's important to us and do that to help prevent burnout and to be more prepared. And you also talk about how to get there and be better prepared by using this statement, or this what is it called? The vision, mnemonic vision, right? And so visualizing your future self, identifying intentions and why it's important, and shifting limiting self-beliefs. Let's see if I can read my writing. The next I is implementing, so that action taking. The next O is being open to abundance, my favorite. And then the N is nurturing that new identity or your next level. So helpful, so helpful. And I would love to hear, is there another piece of advice or another piece of wisdom you would like to share with our listener about this topic?
Yes. Give yourself the gift of journaling. A lot of times I hear the people I coach saying, like, well, I don't have time for that. Just for a couple of minutes. It's been shown how journaling can improve our confidence and our productivity and just improve our mood. So maybe after listening to this, take a few minutes. What came up for you when you're visualizing that future self, and write it down? Create that little movie and of that person you want to become, those identity shifts you want to really integrate into yourself. And you might be surprised of what's come. If you're going to dream anyways, dream big and write it down.
I love that. Thank you so much for sharing that wisdom as we get ready to wrap up this year and jump into the next. And with that, we would love for you to help us launch this podcast into the new year by taking a moment to pause, go to that, give us a rating or review. We would love to see that come through, because that helps us get in front of more people. It will help our show grow, and it's been growing fantastically over these last few months, and we would love to help, or have your help, in growing it even more if you think our message is worthy of being put in front of other listeners. And with that, we hope you stay tuned for our next episode.
Don't miss out on more strategies that will elevate you to new heights. Visit successfulbutstruggling.com now, where you'll discover exclusive resources and the opportunity to connect with each of us individually. There you can dive deeper into how you, too, can take your personal and professional game to the next level. And if you're serious about optimizing your results, take 2 quick steps now. Number 1, connect with us on the website. And number 2, tune in to the next episode.